Throughout the Bible, we have example after example of God speaking. But does he still speak today? Let's talk about it on 3-Minute Theology. I want to spend a few episodes talking about something that I believe is so important in our theology and our understanding of God, and that I know a lot of people have questions about. I want to talk about hearing God. Does he still speak? And if he does, how does he speak to us? And if he is speaking, how can we position ourselves to hear him better? And finally, what do we do if we feel like we've heard God? How do we know if we've heard him? But first, does God speak to us today? I want you to think about something. Genesis 1:27 says that God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. So it's important to know that we were created in God's image. It's also true that we were created by God to be able to speak and to hear, to communicate with one another. In fact, there is no other species on earth that can communicate to the level that human beings can. Let me ask you this. Why would God create us that way and not want to communicate with us? He created us with the ability to communicate, so of course he wants to communicate with us. And of course God still speaks. Let me give you just a few examples of God speaking from the Bible. In Exodus 3:14, God speaks to Moses. In 1 Samuel 3:11, God spoke to the prophet Samuel. In Isaiah 7:3 and Jeremiah 1:7, God speaks to the prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah. And in the New Testament, God speaks to Ananias in Acts 9:15. He also speaks to the apostle Peter in an incredible story in Acts chapter 10. Psalm 139 says that God created our inmost being and that he had a hand in forming us in our mother's womb. Think about that. God was directly involved in you being you. This is actually why I believe the voice of God should be the most familiar voice we ever hear, because he created us. Now it's a journey to rediscover that voice, but God wants to speak to us. In fact, God says, "Call to me and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know," in Jeremiah 33:3. One translation of that verse actually says that God has remarkable secrets to tell us. That's so amazing to me. In fact, throughout history, the church hearing God's voice in different ways has been a central concept that has been embraced by the church. So much so that it's been a common thread throughout hymns and songs written over the centuries. In fact, not until recent years was there any question that God still speaks. And some of that tension is likely due to the different ways we hear God, which we'll talk about next week on 3-Minute Theology. Until next time.